All right, welcome in to Appeal to Heaven. I'm your host, Jonas Schultz. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Well, last episode, when I declared that MAGA is dead, which it quite obviously is, it got a lot of people riled up. A lot of opinions on both sides, and like I said, I totally get it. I totally get it because I'm in both camps at the same time. There are the people like me who have come to terms that this administration, this movement is over, right? Make America Great Again as we know it is over. The America First movement is still alive in terms of among the people. There is a deep desire and passion for America First leadership, but we're not getting that out of what we now consider Make America Great Again. What Make America Great Again has become is make Israel great again, make Iran great again, make Venezuela great again, while here at home, we continue to deteriorate on every level. But there are a lot of passionate people on the side who really had a visceral reaction, especially on social media, to even the suggestion that the Trump administration isn't doing an absolutely perfect, excellent job. And I get it. I really do. Because like I said last episode, people have invested time, they've invested energy, prayers, every level of themselves they've poured into this man and really put all their eggs in one basket and hoping that he's going to be the one to turn this around. So I get it. I get the response. I get the desire to believe. But every time you point out this administration can't get any worse, people just lose their minds, right? One of the things I touched on last episode is the fact that you have so many people who simply will just go along with whatever Donald Trump does. If it would have been Kamala Harris as president doing the exact same things that Donald Trump is doing, and she would have done many of them, these people would be losing their minds saying it's the end of our republic. But since Trump is doing them, it's fine, it's okay, it's all part of the plan, don't panic. I even had a couple people say on social media, Donald Trump has literally done nothing wrong, has never made a single mistake, has never been wrong once. Now, like I said, I totally get it. If you're a big-time Trump supporter and you say, I agree with this guy 90% of the time, 95% of the time, I think he's been a great president. If you can't think of one time, one solitary moment where you think that he has been wrong or a policy has been incorrect or he said the wrong thing or done the wrong thing or any of that, then you simply have just shut off your brain. You are simply not using your own faculties. You are a sheep. Because if you're an independent thinker, you are going to disagree. You are going to find politicians that you like. For example, let me give a perfect example of Thomas Massie. Thomas Massie, I disagree with on a big chunk of issues, especially on immigration, on trade, certain things like E-Verify, for example, but I still like him as a politician. I agree with him on a huge chunk of things. So when we look at any kind of politician, whether it's Trump or anybody else, whether you're listening to me, right? If you're listening to me and you watch every single episode and you've listened to me speak for years and you just agree with absolutely everything I've said, that means something's wrong. That means something's up with you. Because there's a lot of podcasters I follow, whether they're influencers or content creators or politicians or you name it, and I love them, but there's things maybe every single episode that I'm like, I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know if that's correct. That's a human reaction because we're all wired differently. Our brains all work differently. We're all created by a divine creator independently and uniquely. So if you are finding yourself looking at a politician and saying he's never been wrong, ever, then that means something's wrong with you. Because it means you are looking at this person as an idol, as a religious idol to you. If I were to say who is somebody, who is a being who has never been wrong, I would say Jesus Christ. There would be no human being who's existed who would fit that category. But I had people argue with me. And then they asked me, okay, well, you're such a genius. What has he done wrong? I said, well, no mass deportations, no housing relief, bombing more countries than any president this century, right? I went down the line, Obviously, no response. People would, give me eye roll emojis and things like that. So it's a deeply spiritual desire to believe. And on one hand, I get it. On the other hand, it needs to stop. But we waited one more day to see what would happen with the Trump administration, and it got worse, as it does every day. And this has kind of been the how I've felt throughout the Trump administration has been, I'm waiting for things to turn around. I'm constantly, well, maybe today's the day. Maybe this is the day. Oh, Trump said this. Maybe this is going to happen now. And it never does, and it only gets worse. That's been what it's been since 2016, since 2017. Big news today, obviously, Kristi Noem has been fired as the head of the Department of Homeland Security. This is obviously something that needed to happen. Good riddance. Nothing but terrible results, terrible optics from Kristi Noem. She was a terrible hire from the start. The only thing she ever cared about was being on camera, right? We saw the stupid, idiotic, moronic videos or press appearances of Kristi Noem, and she's out in the field with ice, and she's got her hair extensions, she's got her lip fillers, her Botox, the most absurd amount of makeup you've ever seen, wearing a hat, wearing the ice vest, like she's about, and sometimes carrying a rifle or something like that, like she's going in kicking indoors. She's like 90 pounds. It was so ridiculous. It was obviously, and she is obviously a person deeply narcissistic, deeply only cares about the own optics of how she's viewed from a vanity standpoint. Deeply, deeply gross behavior. And I think what really epitomized this, and part of the reason why she got fired, was she authorized spending of $220 million on an ad campaign featuring her primarily riding around on a horse, right? All her makeup, her hair extensions, fillers, all that stuff, riding around on a horse, talking about America, how great it is, right? This just clownish imagery. It looks like something out of a South Park episode. Like it looks too much like a parody. And that's the world we now find ourselves in, the political climate we now find ourselves in, where it's impossible to decipher parody from reality. And this is obviously $220 million. To put that in perspective, there was a movie that came out recently called Melania. I didn't see it. I don't know if you saw it. But it was a biographical movie. It went into theaters. Full-length feature film on Melania Trump. That cost $40 million to create. $220 million for a commercial. So you'd ask yourself, how does that money even add up? $220 million. How does that even add up in my head? How do they get to that amount? Well, the easy answer is there's obviously money laundering going on. This is obviously a scam. Obviously, there was an absurd amount of money put into it and an absurd amount of money paid to people. That's all the government is now, is a patronage program. Every single spending bill you see, money going to research, money going to this project, it's all just money changing hands to politicians' buddies. That's all it's been for decades. And Kristi Noem did this in a very high-profile way. She's getting what she deserves now, and a lot of people are applauding the move. Obviously, people like me who are America First are applauding this move. And there's people who are pro-Trump who are applauding this move, and they're saying, Trump made a difficult decision, but this is the right decision by Trump. Good on Trump. Good for him. See, he always makes the right decisions. He always holds people accountable. And my response is Trump is still hiring absolute clowns. How many times going into 2024, and I'm a 3-time Trump voter, so I voted for Trump in 2024. How many times do we hear going into 2024 and early on in this administration, oh, Trump learned his lessons from 2016. He's not going to make the same mistakes again. He's not going to hire the wrong people. He's going to put a strong team together. He knows now what it takes to succeed. He knows now what it takes to take on the problems. And here we find ourselves again. And Kristi Noem was obviously always a horrible choice. No credentials for this specific position. She was only picked probably because, honestly, Trump likes picking good-looking women for positions. Trump does that on a large number of occasions. So let's not pretend like that didn't play into it. But Kristi Noem was only really burst on the scene. She was pretty good on COVID, right? But then all of a sudden she just comes out and starts attacking Ron DeSantis during that primary, and that really launched her into favor with Trump. And that's really all it takes. And when you start to see what it takes to gain Trump's favor and who Trump picks and who Trump likes, the people that Trump likes, people Trump supports, are just the people who praise him, who pay lip service to him. Trump is an extremely easy person to schmooze. We've seen it time and time again. This is why he makes these disastrous hires. So supposedly the last straw, and this is according to a New York Post article, the last straw with Kristi Noem was her alleged affair with Corey Lewandowski. So this is a story that's been ongoing for years now, that Kristi Noem, a married woman with children, had an affair or has an ongoing affair with Corey Lewandowski, Trump's former campaign manager and a man that has become very powerful in Trump world, Corey Lewandowski. And this was brought to a head during some hearings where Kristi Noem was brought before Congress, and she was asked about it specifically. Have you had an affair with Corey Lewandowski? And her responses were the very obvious guilty reactions of, oh, I can't believe you'd ask me something like this. That's totally inappropriate. I think it's shameful, blah, blah, blah. But she would say everything except saying no. If you're a married woman or a married man, and you were a high profile, whether you're a high profile or not, but if you're a high profile individual brought before Congress under oath, and you were asked, did you have an affair? And you're under oath, would your response be, if you didn't, just no, and I find that insulting? Or would you just not answer the question? Obviously, the affair happened, quite obviously, because she won't deny it. It was quite obvious there's a lot of support, but really what is funny to me and what I wanted to share with you is a story that I have personally interacting with Kristi Noem and Corey Lewandowski. It was in 2021. This was after I had run for Congress in Ohio's 11th district. I had lost the primary by like 500 votes. I was 25 years old at the time. And this was just coming off of this race. And, this was in 2020, coming off that race. And I had a great relationship at that time with the Cuyahoga County Republican Party. I was still in relatively good graces with them, not so much anymore. And I was invited to come to this fundraiser at the Union Club in downtown Cleveland, which is a ritzy club, kind of like a gentleman's club. And they had this big fundraiser. It was like $500 a plate or something like that. It was a Trump 2020 fundraiser. And Kristi Noem and Corey Lewandowski were the keynote speakers. So I was invited. I was able to get in for free. At that time, I had like no money, so I wouldn't have been dropping $500 on a plate for a fundraiser. But it was kind of an intimate setting. Kristi Noem came and spoke. Corey Lewandowski came and spoke. And for somebody like me, who was a young, very ambitious individual trying to make my way in politics, this was a very exciting thing to see two very big names, very prominent Trump world, conservative world individuals come speak. And so it was an awesome opportunity to go be there. And so it wrapped up. They didn't really stay and talk to people for very long, maybe a couple VIPs. There's probably a room of about 50 or so people there. And so they depart. I hung around, chatted up with some people, networked, the things you do as a young Republican. And as I go to leave, maybe an hour or so later after Corey Lewandowski and Kristi Noem spoke, I go downstairs, start to make my way out the door to go with my car, and I see through a crack in a door that's kind of cracked, double doors. I see Kristi Noem and Corey Lewandowski having dinner together. They're having a meal, and they're in this room. It's a big room with one table, and they're completely alone. And so me being the ambitious young Republican I was at the time, I just peeked in there. I just went in. I go in and I say, "Hey, I'm sorry to bother you. I know you guys are having dinner, probably had a really long day and got places to be." I said, "I just want to introduce myself. I'm Jonas Schultz. I ran for Congress here." And they were super warm. They sprung right up, were very friendly, chatted with me, weren't dismissive of me at all. And if I have it, if I can get it up here, I'm going to post the picture. I took a selfie with both of them. I'm going to put it up here. And I remember at the time, I didn't think much of it from the standpoint of they were very chummy with one another, like very chummy. These are both married individuals, and they were both very much giggly, almost very flirtatious. And I didn't really connect the dots until the first rumors of this started to come out, and I said, you know what? They were really chummy with one another. There was certainly a chemistry and a certain energy going on there that was undeniable, especially now that I look back on it, and there's no doubt in my mind that this affair was taking place at that time. This brings me back to kind of the Mike Pence rule that I think is he got a lot of heat for and made fun of for a lot, where if you're not familiar, he would say he would never have dinner or a meeting with a woman alone as a public figure. And obviously everybody in the left-wing media, they said, oh, this is idiotic, this is archaic, it's sexist because you don't trust women or you don't trust yourself, or you have no self-control. And really, it was actually a very good policy because, one, from the optics standpoint, there's never any question about the loyalty to your wife. And then also just not putting yourself in that situation. And if I look back at that moment, back that memory that's very vivid in my mind, you see two married people who, if my wife was in that situation, or if any married person was in that situation, it would make, it would make me very uncomfortable for my wife to be in that kind of intimate setting, traveling around with somebody like that and being that chummy with each other. And you'll see in the picture, they kind of, they even pushed kind of their heads together in this picture. Like they had no problem being any kind of physical touch with each other. Let's just put it that way. So this was something that I can't believe I was able to see, because it so obviously came to fruition and was true there at the end. So now we're going to move on. We're going to get Markway Mullen as the new head of the DHS. Somebody who bought $50,000 worth of Raytheon stock right before we went into Venezuela and Iran, and somebody who praised the officer and even said he gave him a hug to the officer who shot Ashley Babbitt on January 6th. So I'm sure we'll get another great one in that spot. Obviously, I don't have high hopes. I'm sure we'll be getting the same old. Obviously, we've had terrible results when it comes to immigration, from the debacle in Minneapolis, the terrible deportation numbers. Everything about it's been a disaster. I don't expect that to turn around very soon. And the reason for that is because of Donald Trump. So let's check in on the mass deportation front, right? Mass deportations, the pillar of Donald Trump's entire existence as a president, really, when you think about it, is immigration, is mass deportations. It was literally a pillar of his campaign. There were people literally holding signs at the RNC that said mass deportations now. So let's not memory hole it and pretend like it wasn't the key factor that drove millions of people to the polls for Donald Trump. So last we checked in this saga, Donald Trump had tucked tail from Minneapolis, right? Pulled out ICE, caved to Nancy Boy Tim Walz in Minneapolis and Minnesota. They got what they wanted. The ICE protesters, the left-wing nuts, the communists, Antifa, they won. Trump said, I don't like these polling numbers. I don't like the media optics. So we're going to allow the left to bully us out of Minneapolis. What lesson is that going to leave for them? That they can do whatever they want, whenever they want to. Whatever, whenever. That's the lesson that was left in Minneapolis. But that's the last we saw. That's the last that we've really talked about. And then we've shifted to Venezuela, Iran, everything else except what's going on here. And so just in the past 24 hours, Trump put out yet another gem of a quote to show us where he stands on immigration. And none of this is new. And I guess many of us have buried our heads in the sands. We didn't want to believe it, but Trump has been very clear with us that he doesn't intend on pursuing mass deportations. Another quote from him here. This is what he said in regards to the mass deportations. He said, "You got to lighten up on this. They might have come into our country illegally, but they're good people and they're cheap workers. They work now on farms and luncheonettes and hotels. We're just focused on getting the murderers out." You see, it's okay that our culture is being erased. It's okay that your neighborhood is now unrecognizable. It's okay that your wages are suppressed. It's okay that you can't find a job. It's okay that housing is unaffordable. It's okay that we're letting in streams of immigrants because they're cheap workers. As long as they didn't murder anybody, they're cheap workers, and that's what we want. He is openly admitting to what our critique of mass immigration has been for years, which is that it suppresses wages and it gives massive corporations a cheap workforce so they don't have to pay Americans, give Americans health care, train Americans. They can just take Pedro out of Mexico, put him in a field and say, go pick. They can take Consuela, throw her in a hotel and say, clean the rooms. And they can say to, Stephanie Smith in West Virginia, just get on government benefits. We're that you're going to earn as much that way. We're going to pay this illegal immigrant $10 an hour. I don't know what else Donald Trump can say to you that you don't just take as a giant middle finger. That's what this is. A giant middle finger to you and me and every native-born American. Is he saying as long as they're not murderers, as long as they didn't come over here and kill anybody, they're cheap workers. We need cheap workers. We need people to pick the fields and change the beds, and we need people to clean the toilets and mow the lawns. We can't have Americans doing that because we'd have to pay them more. They're too expensive. That's what he's saying. Am I still supposed to pretend this is the Make America Great Again, America First savior? Am I really supposed to pretend that? What happened to the 2015, 2016 Donald Trump? Right? It was not, most of them are very good people. It was, they're rapists, murderers coming in here. They all need to go. We're going to build a wall, make Mexico pay for it. This guy, it's like he's not even the same person. It's sad. It's really, really sad. He's openly admitting, Trump is openly admitting he only cares about the corporations. He only cares about the business interests. And I guess to his credit, why should he care about anything else? They're the ones who manipulate everything. Why should he care about you, the person who's struggling to get by, who maybe can cut his campaign a check for $20, when he can take care of his massive corporation buddies that can open a super PAC for $5 million? Or when he can go bomb Iran because Marianne Adelson wants him to, and she can go open super PACs against all of his enemies and can give his campaign tens of millions of dollars. He doesn't care about you because you're not benefiting the cause of the campaign. What is Trump saying? If you boil it down, he's saying, I don't care about our culture. I don't care about our demographics. I don't care about our wages, our housing, your opportunity. I care about cheap labor for big corporations. He's openly saying it. This is the biggest betrayal in American history, American political history. Trump was elected to combat the immigration that had gotten out of control in this country, legal and illegal. That's why he was elected. Because for decades, Americans had been increasingly anti-immigration, seeing the costs that we've had to pay. Lower wages, less opportunity, more difficulty finding housing, more crime, more chaos, less cultural cohesion. Trump was elected specifically to repair that situation, and where are we? We are now at the point where he is saying to us, people who are upset, you got to lighten up. You got to lighten up? It's sad. We deported around 300,000 people in 2025. 300,000 people. That's abysmal. Part of the reason why Kristi Noem is being fired is because of the backlash against those numbers. They're not going to improve because Donald Trump is going around and saying we're only going to target the murderers, right? So we're going to deport a few thousand people. We're not going to deport the millions and millions, tens of millions of illegals that are here. And I hate and Donald Trump has said this multiple times, we're only going to deport the criminals. They're all criminals. The first thing they did when they got to the United States, their first act upon getting here, was breaking one of our most important laws. Breaking one of our most important laws. Now, if you come into this country legally, I think there should be an entire immigration moratorium, okay? But if you come into this country legally, I can't say any negative thing about you from the standpoint of you went through a process that was made available to you. But if you come here legally, the first thing you did was literally break the law. And you need to break many, many laws to be here. Forging identification, forging papers, working illegally. And many of these people, it's not even just this. It's not even just what they do illegally. It's the system that's legally there that they take advantage of to the detriment of native-born Americans, taking advantage of our school system, taking advantage of our healthcare system, and guess what? We pay higher premiums as a result. And Donald Trump tells us we have to lighten up. We have to lighten up. So we have 300,000 deportations, pitiful, embarrassing numbers, nothing close to a mass deportation. And all the while we deport 300,000 people, let's check in on the non-permanent work visas through quarter 3 of 2025. Trump approved over 300,000 H-1B visas, over 300,000 H-2B visas, 66,000 H-2 non-agricultural visas, 64,000 H-2 supplemental visas, and has issued or renewed 145,000 H-4 visas. This is additional, in addition to 640,000 student visas, 122,000 OPT visa, and 78,500 STEM OPT extensions. That is 1.7 million additional immigrants on visas. That's the America First, Make America Great Again president right there. So we deport 300,000. Great. We close the border. Great. Those are good things. Both of those in and of themselves are good things. But at the same time, we still flood our country with millions of legal immigrants. So this is still the great replacement of us, of native-born Americans, specifically white Americans, right? Specifically ancestral Americans. It's still the great replacement. When you have millions of people coming over, you're still changing the culture. You're still changing the demographics. You're still making housing more difficult to attain. You're still suppressing wages. You're making it harder for U.S. native-born students to get into school, to get into colleges, to get a degree. So, as I've said for a long time, why should I care if I'm being replaced or my culture is being shifted or if my country is being stolen illegally or legally? It's the same result. Everything that you're seeing going on in Europe for the most part has been done legally. When you see the videos of the streets of Paris or London and it looks like a Middle Eastern or African bazaar or an Indian street fair, that was all done legally. through refugee programs, through legal immigration. So are we just supposed to say, well, it was legal? Screw that. I want my country. I don't care, legal or illegal. I want my country back. It's mine. It's ours. It belongs to us. It is our birthright. And so if you're going to claim to be America first, you must be for a full immigration moratorium and mass deportations of tens of millions of people. There's no more middle ground. We could have had this conversation in the 60s, in the 70s, 80s, 90s even, of saying, hey, we're going to close the border and we're going to have a strict legal process of people coming in here. We're only taking the best and brightest. That was a conversation for 30 years ago or more. But thanks to the efforts of America Last, Democrats, and Republicans, we're out of options outside of more immigration moratorium and mass tens of millions deported. That's not going to be easy, but it can be done. Harder things have been done. There's nothing about it that can't be done. We just have to have the will to do it. And we can't be in the situation like we've been in Minneapolis, where one person gets hurt or one person who's trying to assault a police officer dies. And we say, oh my goodness, one person got hurt or one person died. I guess we can't deport anyone anymore. It's going to be tough. It's going to be very difficult. But it has to be done. Right? And this is the same time we're failing on mass deportations. We're shipping in millions of more foreigners, especially third world foreigners. And Trump is now saying that we're going to be bringing in Iranian refugees who cooperate with us. Wow. Who could have seen that coming? Oh, anybody who's ever paid attention to anything that's ever happened in the Middle East, that anytime there's a conflict, the United States and Europe are flooded with refugees every single time without exception. And he said the ones that are going to cooperate with us, oh yeah, that worked really great with Afghanistan. Do we all forget about the interpreter who shot and killed National Guardsmen in D.C.? We don't learn our lessons, or we don't care. That's what the Trump administration has become. So I like to do these recaps because I talk about the state of Make America Great Again, the state of Donald Trump, and here we are on March 6th, 2026. Where are we right now in this moment? Well, right now we're waging war with Iran, explicitly for Israel, which some sources are now saying could last through the entire summer or go beyond. Trump is announcing that Cuba is going to be next, so we're not even done, right? We're already we're not even done with Iran, and we're already planning our next adventure. Immigration still sky high. The U.S. actually lost 92,000 jobs in February. A record number of Americans tapped into their 401k in 2025 early because they're having trouble affording their life. And when asked if Americans should be worried about retaliatory attacks here in the United States due to our war in Iran, Donald Trump responded, quote, I guess. Like I said, some people will die. When you go to war, some people will die. That's what we're getting. That's what we're getting from Make America Great Again. That's what we're getting from Donald Trump. I'm not going to pretend to save anybody's feelings that this is anything else but a betrayal. Got to wake up before it's too late. Trump and the GOP are heading for an absolute slaughter in the midterms, and voters like me are just not going to bail them out anymore. We're done unless you give us what we want. And that should have been our attitude for a long time. But we've enabled the system. We've enabled the GOP. We've enabled them to be a shield for the left. We've enabled these people, and we need to stop being enablers. We have been the abused spouse. We've been the one that every day we come home or our spouse comes home and they slap us around. We burnt the dinner, maybe. We did something wrong. Slap your eye. You stink. I hate you. Slap us around, throw us on the couch. We cry ourselves to sleep. And we wake up the next day and we just hope, oh, well, maybe he'll come around this time. Because the next morning he sobers up and he says, I'm really sorry about last night. That's never going to happen again. And then with our two black eyes, we say, oh, I'm sorry. It's okay. I still love you. Then he comes home, beats the crap out of us again. And the cycle repeats itself. That's what it's been like as a Republican voter. And I can't do it anymore. I'm moving out, packing up my things. I'm moving out. And if they really show me that they've changed, maybe I'll think about it again. But that's got to be us. We got to stop enabling them. We have to stop bailing them out. All right, this is Appeal to Heaven. I'm Jonah Schultz. Make sure you're subscribing, you are liking, you are sharing, and I'll make sure to see you next time.